Hello, one and all.
Good
Hello.
afternoon.
Sorry, go ahead. Who's on the phone?
This is Scott on the phone.
Well, hey, Scott. How are you? Damon here. You've got Leslie, Dimmy, and Lucy, and somebody else is connecting right now. I don't know if that's Rachel or who.
Yes, this is Rachel. How are you all doing?
Hey, Rachel. How are you?
I'm doing good. So I have another call at 2 o'clock that I'm gonna have to jump off and attend. But Dimney is gonna be sticking around. She's gonna be taking notes. She is our intern. She's excellent. So if you have any questions, feel free to funnel them through her. And she'll relay them back to me and I can follow up. I do know Jennifer is going to be joining. I'm not sure if she is already on.
Not yet.
Okay, perfect. She was gonna attend for the first like 15 minutes or so. So she should be able to help you all out.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Rachel. And
Yeah.
we'll ask all sorts of questions about you regard to Dimny, and we'll figure out what type of internship she's getting over there.
Well, hopefully it's an excellent one, but
I'm sure it is.
she has been wonderful.
I'm seeing thumbs up. Dimny, where are you going to school?
I go to the University of Virginia. I'm a rising third year, but I'm
Nice.
originally from Raleigh.
Oh, did you say rising third year? So are you in law school?
No, sorry, junior, rising junior, rising third year,
Rising junior.
undergrad.
Got it. Got it. And you're
Yes,
from Raleigh. What high school?
I went to St. Mary's,
Nice.
um,
Right down the
yes,
street.
yeah.
We use numbers now, Damon. First
Is that
year,
what we
second
do?
year, third year.
Okay, seriously, tell me.
Apparently,
Hey, let's clue Grandpa in here. That's a thing we do now. It's not freshman,
Yeah,
sophomore,
instead
junior
of
thing.
freshman, sophomore, junior.
When
It's
did
it's
that
also
ridiculous.
happen?
it's a weird UVO thing, I think. I don't know. I always forget that some people still say, I don't know.
Is that new? Okay, seriously, I'm feeling a little out of touch here.
It's been a while. Yeah.
All right, I figured the perfect person to ask how new this is Lucy, because she's been out of school for about 5 years now, right?
Don't age me. It's only been 4, but
Were
I
you a
think
third year or were you a junior?
I was a junior, but I think instead of saying freshman, people are saying first year
Ah,
instead of
is
gendering
that because
it.
of the gendered language?
Hmm.
Well,
But
semester has its, I mean, we could talk about the patriarchy and the school nomenclature all day long, right? Semester, there's all sorts of words that have sort of gendered connotations. So,
I think it also creates space for non-traditional students,
yeah.
right? So a lot of people are coming in later or, so it's just, yeah, I'm in my third year, or people are staying a little bit longer. So
I took
I'm
a
in my
virtual
third year, my fourth year, yeah.
lab.
I don't know. I feel like it was UVA has kind of people say that UVA has their own like language. I feel like they've said it for a long time, and now other people are starting to give it to them. I don't know. I use them synonymously still
Well,
sometimes.
I've learned something. If nothing else happens today, I have information I didn't have. So thank you for that. Hello, Jennifer. I'm glad you're here. Word on the street is you're not staying long.
That's
And
right. And 15 whole minutes.
all right, well, let me just let's get rock and roll if it's okay with everybody. And let me just first start with an apology. I have been not in the loop. I could offer what I will refer to as explanations, not excuses, but the just sad fact of the matter is I just have had stuff going on. So apologies here. The good news for all of you all is Lucy, who's been co-chairing this, has also had some other stuff going on as well, but she's been a little bit more engaged than I am. So Lucy, what do you think? Do you want to drive?
sure. And I want to name that Catherine and Leslie have been the unsung heroes of this operation. Y'all have stepped up and shown up, and I think y'all are kind of honorary chairs, if I can say that. But I'm excited because we're, reaching the close of this chapter with the report, and I think it's in a really solid place, especially thanks to y'all's collaboration. So if y'all aren't opposed to it, I would love to just share what I have so far. And the bulk of really what I feel like we need guidance on is the last piece, which is the recommendations. And I don't know if we can have sort of a separate conversation, I guess, about should we give recommendations since, the committee in its entirety, I know they aren't all able to come on today. Should we try to synthesize some recommendations without the input of everyone, or should I circulate it after to folks? And I just don't want to write for everyone, so let me go ahead and I'm just going to skim through it just so we have a visual and y'all know what is going on. So this is the template for the final report form. We have our name, we have this was who was on the roster that Rachel had, and I'll double check and just make sure we are not missing anyone.
Hey, can I interrupt for a sec?
Yes, go for it.
Just because I want to set your mind at ease, so I know I'm not going to be on until the end. In terms of recommendations, it is absolutely fine that there's not a consensus yet with the committee. What we are hoping, because obviously elections are in November, nothing's going to change before then. I mean, except things that are, currently in legislation, maybe. We want to emphasize is discovery that you made, things that you looked at, the research you used, what you discovered about the way it's done now. The recommendations, you can say we discussed, XYZ, we didn't come to a conclusion, we know it's an issue, we're going to continue to get public input on whatever that part of it is, because we are going to get public input from our town halls. And, even like as the election proceeds, there may be things that come up that we want to emphasize in the final report, which is going to be December or January. And so it's okay to say, we looked at these issues, we talked about them, we didn't come to a conclusion yet. That is perfectly fine. So I just wanted to set your mind at ease for that end part about conclusions, because, this is a draft. It's not the final. And what we do want to point to are things that, are areas of concern. Everybody says public education is an area of concern. All the committees are saying that. So, that's a good common thing to be talking about, but just don't get too hung up on, whether everybody voted on something or whether you've got a consensus, or if you want to have an exact recommendation yet, that's not needed. So I just wanted to let you know that. And now I'll go back to listening.
No, that is so helpful. I'm so glad you chimed in. That's very appreciated. And I should have done the disclaimer at the beginning too. This is all stuff I put down. It is in draft form completely. I just wanted to have something to work with, and it's all in our folder that Rachel had previously shared. So all of this is it should be accessible to everyone. I can also send it as a link in the chat. But so we have committee meetings. I talk about the Google form that Catherine sent out later. So when it asks what specific topics, so I said we looked at current assets in North Carolina that promote civic education, and then we will, discuss recommendations for future public awareness. And these are the current practices. That there are two main sources. We only focused on, I'm going to say, nonpartisan organizations, and then boards of election. So not just the state board, but also our county boards of election. So Leslie took the lead on compiling organizations doing civic education work. And so we have two different documents that have descriptions of what the groups are, where they're located, what they do, and some of what their reach is. And then I have it also in a spreadsheet. I'll put a little note. I think it would be great to have a map. I don't know if we can drop, some pins. may have to ask you again, Catherine, how you make amazing visuals like that. But I think that having a map representation of where these organizations are would be helpful. And we know a lot of them, thanks to the campus compact, a lot of them are located on college campuses. But it'd be interesting to see where exactly they are, because I've only seen it with words, not with a visual. And then Damon was able to get some information from the state board of elections, where they sent out 2 mailers about specifically the change in voter ID. One was out in February, I got mine, and then they plan to send out another one ahead of the general election. And they also they have an outreach specialist, which I don't know if we want to get some more information on what that role does, but I think it would be interesting, to maybe follow up and just say how many seminars have been done, how many North Carolina voters have been reached, and try to capture that. And then, so that was the update from the state, and then from local boards. There was almost a 25% response rate, which I feel like is very impressive, especially considering where they come from. It was from, all the way from the far west to the coast. And I like how they're, we're really covering the entire coast. And so these are just some highlights from it. Catherine, especially since you were more well-versed with the data, if you think there are some that we need to make sure we include, we can put in the whole survey if you would like. But you did a great summary, especially of these last questions. What do you need? Uniform materials that all counties can utilize. We can share that with the state board. Newspaper articles, some people said you need to shift beyond newspapers. And then they shared some more best practices. So that's sort of a summary of that local survey that really just was so illuminating. And Catherine, thank you so much again for spearheading that. And I think that's something really sort of innovative and special to claim that, we were able to reach a quarter of our local boards and get their input. So, the last 2 pieces that we have in the template are what did we learn, and then what would we recommend changing. I will leave it at that. If y'all have answers to those that you want to go ahead and put in there, or if we just want to open it up to discussion based on what this draft looks like, I'm happy to do that too.
Thanks, Lucy. This is looking great so far. I think you're hitting all the main points with everything. Glad that you reached out to the state and got information from them. I was also interested in how many people are working on outreach and civic education at the state and what their budget is. I think that might be helpful information to get.
That's a great idea. Damon, would you mind emailing Patrick again?
Not a problem.
Okay.
The budgetary information, oh yeah, not a problem.
And I love everything you included from the survey. Maybe just a bullet point. It doesn't have to be a graph, but if a graph is helpful about how much they're spending, that might be helpful, because if I recall, more than half, it was less than $1,500, or about half.
Right.
That's 18. So that was really illuminating to me, just like the dollars and pennies that directors have to spend on this.
Lucy, I would also say I think that it's important to acknowledge, although we don't lean into it, that a significant amount of civic education does in fact happen by partisan orgs, right? The parties and all kinds of other folks. So I don't want to leave that out if we're really trying to capture the landscape. So I think it's important to say, you know, a significant amount of this happens in a partisan manner. There's tons of there's actually a huge new partisan group that just came into the state with millions and billions of dollars. And so those of us who've been doing this on the ground for a long time are trying to navigate that whole process because they're contacting our campuses directly. But all of that is to say there's a significant amount of it that happens, but we concentrated on the nonpartisan and the other folks. So in my mind, one of the recommendations would be more of a direct, whether that's the role of this outreach person or not, I don't know. More of a direct relationship between those entities and the Board of Elections to ensure that accurate information is going out. I think we've all heard the horror stories about improper voter registration knowledge and information that's going out. So for me, when I think about a recommendation, I just think it would be really interesting, maybe even a convening of those nonpartisan folks who are out there doing this in the board. I think a few of us are connected to the board. Like Lindsay did a whole session for our campuses, Lindsay Wakely. But anyway, just I'm rambling at this point. Thanks.
You're talking to the chief of rambling, so don't worry a bit. That is so helpful. That is very helpful. Let's see, what did Jennifer say in the chat? What was learned is important, how things are done now, and those partner orgs, that is interesting. And the small amount of public money for public information is very revealing. Yes. I don't know if it's worth, I'm at the legislature now. I don't know if it's worth saying, you know, there have been these bills that have been filed to provide more funding for especially
Election
civic.
infrastructure and security.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's about a $5 million, $4.5 million shortfall annually to the Board of Elections. And that's not like a padded, like, ooh, we want to do all this public information stuff. That's just straight operational. Which is frustrating sometimes for the Pat Ginnons of the world, because, you know, he's understaffed, but that's neither here nor there.
You don't think that's it, we shouldn't include that in?
You know, I mean, I think what we're trying to do here is I don't know. I mean, that's a good, I'm rambling now. I could see wanting to call out the fact that, you know, public information takes resources and the state currently doesn't fund that appropriately. But I also don't want to turn it into this current General Assembly is, you know, done whatever they've done. This is not something that it's certainly been exacerbated under the last 10, 12 years, but this is something that's been true for 25.
Yeah, I would just, I'm still on, I've got a few more minutes. I would agree. We don't want to point any fingers right now at any current legislation. However, I think it's important to raise it as a concern. I mean, if you know, factually know the budget has been underfunded, and that's one reason why, for example, we can't all get a copy of our sample ballot in the mail to our residents, you know, a week before we're going to go and vote, which some states do. You know, the mailings are limited by the funding for civic education, and you know, that would be one way to be more transparent and to get more people engaged. So, I mean, you can, you know, you can summarize, you can just say it's an issue of concern. We're going to continue to look at, you know, look at this issue and before the final report or something like that. But I wouldn't point to specific legislation that's happening right now. And I don't know if is that helpful? Is that clear as mud?
Yeah.
All right. Now I am going to duck out. But
Well,
thank you all, doing great stuff.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. At one point, I came across a Common Cause NC report that had mentioned a per voter figure for how much was being spent on outreach, or how much should be spent on outreach.
Like a state to state comparison?
It wasn't state to state, it was just North Carolina. And I just tried to find it and it's not coming up. But would that be helpful? I haven't come across this yet, but if there is, recommendations from any of the national groups, or, what is, the average or a good amount per voter that should be spent?
I feel like the the National Conference on State Legislatures did something like this a while back.
Mm,
I'll see if I can look it up.
that would be great. And I think a good data point just for us to have. Under learning, I mean, it's kind of simple, but should we just state something like, and this goes back to some of the comments that we got from the survey, but that the smaller counties with smaller budgets do really rely on a lot of the voter education groups, partisan and nonpartisan, because some of them mention DNC and RNC, to get information out about voting.
I'm also thinking about what Jennifer just said, and so I do wonder if we want to at least list one or two best practice recommendations. So this idea of sending out ballots in advance, that a lot of states do, is, if we had the money, I think a great best practice. But again, that's the only one I can think of in terms of voter education that we know is done sort of.
Well, so
structure.
So the North Carolina had a public financing of the judicial elections, and part of that law was to provide a voter guide to every household. And it was paid for vis-a-vis a checkoff on the tax return. That voter guide also included, in addition to candidate statements for those judges, information on where to find your polling place, how to do all that type of work. It continued to publish, I believe, through 2020, maybe even 2022, from residual money in that fund that hadn't expired yet, even though the judicial campaigns were no longer nonpartisan nor publicly financed. It might be worth checking if there's any of those resources left and they're going to go out. But one thing that, some jurisdictions can do is send a voter guide. Not a go vote for campaign X, but here's where and how to vote. We did it. We, in a different election reform organization I worked for a couple of decades ago, we did an AB voter test on that. So we polled a universe, I think in Wake County, of like 40,000 voters, and sent voter guides to 20,000 of them and not to the other 20,000. And there was a statistically significant increase in voting turnout behavior. Much to the chagrin of many of my very progressive donors, it had a greater influence on getting Republicans to vote as opposed to Democrats. But I thought it was a good idea regardless. It got more people voting. So.
And I also know if we want to uplift sort of model opportunities from partner orgs, I know that You Can Vote will be releasing their Build Your Ballot tool. They're working with like a national, they're going to be the only organization in North Carolina that has it, but other organizations nationwide do. And so a person can go in and see all the different races and understand their own ballot by putting in like their zip code or something. So I think that could also, if we can't get funding for it to happen statewide or by jurisdiction or whatever, that to point folks towards that tool.
Yeah, that sounds like a great tool.
What's the specific budget question I need to ask the state board?
I would say, how many staff work on voter education and outreach, and what's the budget for it? And do we want more information? Do we want to know what else they're doing besides the mailers?
Yeah.
Well, they did share they're doing seminars, voter education seminars across the state. So I think having figures behind that, how many seminars have they done and how many voters have they reached would be really great.
And Catherine, I can't remember which model we wanted to uphold. Didn't you find one county that did something really cool? We talked about that when we met. I can't remember.
The Election Academy.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
which
I think
county?
we definitely want to point to that. To ask the question, would it be possible to
Forsyth.
expand that?
Is it the Forsyth County one?
Forsyth, yeah.
Great.
Tim Suji, the guy who runs that over there, has done a lot of good work in that space. If we need to talk to him, he's a friend.
Maybe what I could do is list all of these under resources at the very bottom too. We didn't have, I know maybe Martha circulated something. It was probably last fall. It was some kind of academic research, but we didn't rely as much on that, unless I'm forgetting something, which is very likely.
Well, it sounds to me like we're kind of circling it here. We've got a good draft that Lucy and team put together. Yay. We've got a couple things to take down. We've got Jim Morrill going on mute because he's getting out of his car. And now he's gone. I scared Jim away. Sorry, Jim. And really, I think we're pretty locked in. I think I shared this maybe at the top. I won't be able to be there in person. I'll be in northern Michigan of all places. But what else do we need to do before we get this thing done?
Let's see if you just want to send the final version where you've now added in sort of some recommendations. I think it'd be great for us to all review that.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, yay.
It makes me feel better too. This is the draft of the draft, and then they said it won't be finalized until end of this year. So it's not quite as daunting.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's good, but it's good we all got legs on it. You're good to get us together. And yay team, and yay democracy, and yay all that's righteous and good in the world.
I do have one other question. This was like the phase 1, and then there was going to be a phase 2. Do we want to add anything in there about that?
Ooh,
I
good
think
question.
it's great. We can just say we're here. We've been enlisted to help with the Trusted Elections tour and, support the work of other committees where they find their gaps in, voter understanding about certain aspects, campaign finance to early voting, absentee ballot rules. And I think that'd be great to include at the end. Thank you for flagging that.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Well, with that team,
Caroline, do you have anything? I feel like,
No, Lucy, I'm just listening. You guys are, y'all have done a fantastic job, and I've just been kind of hanging on listening to y'all. So thank you for all you're done. And Catherine and Leslie, thanks a million. It sounds like you all done a bunch of work too. So no, I'm just, grateful to kind of be listening and trying to take it all in. Thank you, Lucy.
oh, thank you all. Well, I hope y'all stay cool.
stay
And
cool, y'all. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks
everyone.
everybody.
bye.